Brandon, we don't have your audio here. Nothing.
Is your audio now?
Oh, got you. Okay.
All right,
there we are.
There we go. Wow.
Almost got off without a hiccup.
Yeah, almost.
Close.
But hey, Parker is in Omaha, Nebraska, watching the Omaha Sooners, see if they can't get another win to get into the national title series on Saturday. They play Wednesday night, the winner of Texas A&M and Notre Dame. I'm in Tulsa, just went out and saw Luke Has, Cole Adams, Dylan has a couple of other players at Broken Arrow, Wasso, Jinx. I mean, there was a lot of talent out there at Wasso tonight that we were out watching. So, plus lots of visits to talk about, a lot of recruiting talk. There is a ton to talk about, and we're going to dive right into it. But we got to start with college baseball. College baseball is where it's at. I think Oklahoma fans would agree right now. The Oklahoma Sooners are on fire. They've been on fire. I think it was the last 5 or 6 series, conference series going to end the season. And then they kept on rolling into the Big 12 tournament, won that. And ever since then, the bats have been hot, whether it's Treadway, whether it's Graham, whether it's Pettis, whether it's Crooks, it doesn't matter who it is. They're on fire. Then you've got 3 of the better pitchers in all of college baseball, closing out with Mr. Piedmont, Mr. Michaels.
I know you're loving that, Brandon.
I am. He's got a little bit of that going. So I love looking a little Piedmont Wildcat action going there. So, hey, look, Oklahoma Sooners are on fire right now. Skip Johnson has that program going. And here's the funny thing about it, Parker, you can probably, obviously you can chime in on this, and I want you to, is they've recruited so well for the past few years. A lot of that talent ended up going to the Major League Baseball or the minor league, signing contracts. But the players that they had still along in the recruiting classes, that's what you're seeing now. That's how well Skip Johnson has been building the program up. We're just now starting to see it. 2020 probably would have been a lot like 2022, but it is what it is. COVID cut it short. But Peyton Graham, man, my goodness, 4 for 4. 4 for 4 yesterday. That man, he's raking right now.
Well, you talk about how well they've recruited, Brandon, and that's true. And you've seen some of that materialize into high-end MLB draft picks. Think back to the 2020 draft. Of course, the Sooners had a really strong team in 2020, a team that probably would have gone to Omaha. And then, lo and behold, the COVID-19 pandemic hits, and you have Dane Acker, Cade Cavalli, and Levi Prater all off the board in the top 4 rounds of the MLB draft. And so Skip Johnson had to start from scratch with his rotation to a certain degree. But on the topic of recruiting and speaking to how well Johnson and his staff have recruited as of late, you look at some of the keystone contributors in this Oklahoma lineup. Wallace Clark, the third baseman, is a freshman. Jackson Nicholas, the second baseman, who had the big grand slam to catapult him to a victory over Texas A&M, also a freshman. John Spikerman, who didn't have his first at-bat of the season until mid-April and has suddenly emerged over the final 2 months of the season as a dynamic leadoff hitter and a really good defensive right fielder for this team. He's also a freshman. Blake Robertson, not a freshman, but he's in his first year with the program after the Sooners brought him over from the JUCO circuit. So that speaks to how well Skip Johnson and his staff have recruited as of late. The fact that there is so much youth that is contributing to this torrid postseason run that has the Sooners 3 wins away from a national title. And just imagine this, Brandon. Imagine trying to convince anybody as recently as a month ago that the Sooners' next national title in a major men's sport would be in baseball.
Right.
How about it?
Yeah.
What a job Skip Johnson has done. What a job this entire lineup 1 through 9 has done. You take a look at the pitching staff. What makes this team so fun is that they get contributions from everybody. Man, it's never the same guy. And sure, to a certain degree, Peyton Graham is the meat and potatoes of this lineup. You could say the same about Tanner Treadaway. Those two, and you can throw Jimmy Crooks in that conversation as well. The 2, 3, 4 hitters for Oklahoma have been lights out for the vast majority of the season. Graham has played his way into fringe first-round draft status heading into the offseason, and If he chooses to make the jump to the next level, he's going to make himself a lot of money. If he comes back, hey, Oklahoma has a phenomenal chance to be right back in Omaha next year. But you look at what Graham has done. You look at what Treadaway has done, hitting over 500 in his last 70 at bats. And then Crooks, with some of the big hits that he's come up with and the power that he displays every time he steps in the box, it seems like even if he doesn't come up with a big hit, he records a very loud out. Even his outs sound like base hits off the bat. So, yeah, it's been so fun to watch this run take place. And I think what enthuses you the most and what should give Sooner fans an additional belief and improve upon their belief that this team can go deep and potentially bring home a national title is the fact that they can beat you so many different ways. They can beat you your own game. They beat Texas A&M in a slugfest on Friday. They beat Notre Dame with small ball last night. So again, however the opponent shows up ready to play, Oklahoma can take their game and beat them at it. And that's what's so fun about watching the way that this team plays right now.
It's kind of miraculous, honestly, because when you look at how they started the season, and I even talked to somebody around the program earlier in the season. They said, look, man, we're better than almost everybody that we've lost against. And they were being dead serious about it. They said, the bats aren't going right now. We're struggling getting things going. The pitching is kind of up and down. And the exact comment to me was, when Cade Horton gets healthy, it's going to change a lot of things because the pitching rotations is going to get to where Skip wants it at. And you saw that last night. Like, when you're looking at how they're going to go through this rotation throughout the College World Series, they may not have to go 3 deep starting. Like, they could go back and pitch number 1 on Wednesday because he's already been sitting out for 5 days. Then get Cade Horton the first game of the national title series if they go out and they win. I mean, that could literally be how it all plays out. And that's huge for Oklahoma. The way that they're pitching right now, the way that they're hitting, the gap between the games because they keep winning has allowed them to stay 1-2, 1-2 in their pitching rotation. And I think I think it's kind of an understated topic when it comes to this, because if you can stay 1-2 throughout the majority of the College World Series, you've got a really good chance of winning the whole thing, because those are your studs, right? Those are the guys that are going to put you in the right position. And honestly, to see Cade Horton throw over 100 pitches last night after Tommy John surgery, that was massive, especially when he was slinging his slider and his cutter. That they were on. And he hasn't been able to do that up until over the last few weeks. So that was big for Oklahoma.
And you saw last night why Cade Horton was a top 50 MLB draft prospect coming out of high school. When his stuff is at its best, and it was last night, he is electric on the mound. 11 strikeouts over 6 innings, of course, against that red-hot Notre Dame team, at least coming in to put the Sooners in position to win that ball game, move them to 2-0 in this College World Series, and put them on the cusp of securing a berth in the National Championship Series, which will be best of 3 against whoever emerges from the other side of that bracket. Now, the Sooners are going to face off with either Notre Dame or Texas A&M on Wednesday. Rematch any way you slice it. The Sooners have seen both of those teams, have beaten both of those teams in Omaha. But you look at what has marked some of the national title teams of years past in Omaha. The Sooners have some of those key ingredients. One that I have cited repeatedly is the ability to milk extended innings out of your relief ace. And I use the term relief ace rather than closer because once you get to Omaha, closers don't really exist anymore. If you got a dominant arm out of the bullpen, you are using him a lot. And it might be at the end of the game. It might not be at the end of the game. You might have to pull him out and start him at some point. But the Sooners have gotten extended innings from Trevin Michael when they've needed them. You go back to the Gainesville Regional. He started that win or die game, went 6 innings, put them in position to win that ball game and advance to the Blacksburg Super Regional. And you look at what he's already done through 2 games in the College World Series, got him 8 outs against Texas A&M to close that game, got him 6 outs against Notre Dame to close that game. So he has already demonstrated that not only does he have electric shutdown stuff, but he's got the type of stamina to the point where you can legit milk innings out of him. You're not going to have to worry about stretching him out because he's not going to tire easily. And I think it says a lot about Skip Johnson's ability to manage his pitching staff effectively, that, you know, through 2 games at the CWS, they've only used 2 relievers. They've used Michael and they've used Jarrett Godman. Technically, they used David Sandlin as well, but he got roughed up by A&M. I think he only threw about 18 pitches, and he's not a reliever by trade anyway. So the bullpen is going to be as close to full strength as possible as the Sooners get ready for this finishing kick. And Michael has been darn near unhittable all throughout the postseason. So when you combine that with a strong start from Bennett, albeit not an elite start on Friday against A&M, and a certainly elite start from Horton on Sunday, you have the makings of a staff that is starting to really come together and gel at the right time for Oklahoma. You combine that with what you're getting out of this lineup night in and night out, any number of guys all contributing to the bottom line that generally will get you quite a few runs, enough runs, the point where you feel comfortable with your pitching staff that they don't necessarily have to be at their best in order to win you a ball game. It's going to take a lot for either Notre Dame or Texas A&M to beat the Sooners twice in a row. So at this point, Oklahoma's in the catbird seat. Just talking to people around the press box, people with no horse in the race yesterday, Brandon, people who either cover college baseball from a national perspective or who cover other teams, i.e. not Oklahoma or Notre Dame. The prevailing belief leading into that game last night was the winner of this game between OU and Notre Dame is going to win the College World Series, because it's pretty dang obvious that those 2 teams are the best in the country right now, and they're the hottest in the country. And so with Horton able to power down the Irish bats and the Sooners able to do enough on offense to come out on the victorious end, it is all right there in front of them. As long as they don't beat themselves, they've got to be considered the favorite to take home the title.
We're just going to leave the Hogs out of this. Like they've been pretty hot too. I don't know.
Oh boy. Here's your Arkansas fandom coming out of the woodwork.
I have no fandom there for that at all. Actually, like that, I am what you would call as an anti Arkansas fan-ish person, but I've watched them and they've been really good this postseason. I mean, they dominated.
Here's what I know about Arkansas, though. They find a way in Omaha.
They do.
They do. Somehow they find a way. And
man,
so
but their fans travel. That's
yes, they do.
For sure.
But they just find a way to get themselves bounced. And sometimes it is absolutely agonizing. Go back to 2018 when all they had to do was corral a foul pop-up for the final out to wrap up.
They're losing 10-3 right now. They're losing 10-3. I didn't even know that because I've been at 7-on-7. So
yeah, how about that Ole Miss team? They were the last team in the NCAA tournament field. They were the absolute last team to get a berth, and they have been white hot. They have not lost a game in postseason play since they made the tournament over several teams that many folks thought were more deserving. North Carolina State, Old Dominion, Mississippi State.
They won the Egg Bowl to get in. How about that? All right. That's the way to do it if you're going to do it. So I guess we can move on a little bit. Let's talk some recruiting. I know everybody's got questions on the recruiting trail. I think we can start with Jaquays Petaway, not Jaquays, Jaquays Petaway.
Is it Jaquays?
Yeah, I found that out today.
Okay. Good. Clarity. I had heard
good.
Some people call him Jaquez. So
Jaquez.
there was a lot of uncertainty as to how his name was actually pronounced. So glad we have some clarity on that end of things.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about him. He just visited Texas this weekend. Everybody kind of thought that they were going to be a problem there. Well,
that's a Red River battle.
It is a Red River battle, but I'm going to potentially in the next 48 hours put in a crystal ball there for that. So I like Oklahoma's odds right now. From what I heard at this juncture, things are still looking really, really good for Oklahoma. there were some family members that are part of the equation in the recruiting process that did not make the trip. And I'll dive more into that on OU Insider, that didn't make the trip to Austin and has made it to Oklahoma with Jaquays on numerous occasions. And this person has a lot of say in this recruiting process and how things are playing out. And from everything I've been told, right now, Oklahoma is still the leader. Now, we all have covered recruiting long enough to know that it can change so quickly. But right now, as of today, even post visit in Austin, I would lean towards Oklahoma. On the flip side, Michael Harrison Pilot is, there was still a feeling that Oklahoma was going to be hard to beat, even with him pushing back his visit and all that type of wanting him to come later on. And the reason why Oklahoma wanted him to come later on now, come to find out, is because he pushed his decision date back. Like, he's looking to go later on in the season, from what I'm hearing, instead of before the season. And it was originally, he was going to decide before the season. So they decided, well, if you're going to wait, we're going to wait to take this visit for you. I will say that Marion has done a really, really good job. The wide receiver coach for Texas has done a really good job recruiting Michael Harrison Pilot, because I can tell you for a fact that a source on the Texas side that I had talked to told me that they thought it was Oklahoma, California. And this was as early as late May, like ending of the spring practices. So Texas is making a run there. I'm not ready to say that Texas is the outright leader, but I'm starting to believe that they may come in and swoop in and take that one a little bit. Now, here's the catch to that. Anthony Evans visited Texas A&M this weekend, and that was one that everybody kind of had circled, if you were in Norman, something to monitor. And from what I'm hearing as of now, Oklahoma still has the lead for Anthony Evans. Now, what that means, how far that goes, I don't know. And when he wants to decide, we still don't have like a definitive date yet for him. So we're kind of at the heels for him. He wants to decide before the season. Jaquays wants to decide before the season as well. And if that timeline still is in play, I like Oklahoma's chances, especially if, from what I'm hearing, there's potential of July 24th and 29th being very big days for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. We'll dive into the potential of that and if that's going to happen and all that, and who could be as we get closer to those dates. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but things are still looking good for Oklahoma on the offensive side. And I would still tend to lean towards Oklahoma with Peyton Kirkland as well. And I know a lot of people still feel Oklahoma's going to be hard to beat. I think what you got to watch out for with him is Miami on the 20th through 22nd of June. And that exact day that his official ends for Miami, he could potentially be heading off to Texas A&M. And with his mom moving to Houston, that's something to watch if you're an Oklahoma fan. And everybody's going to go, well, they're moving to Houston because A&M. No, he's moving to Houston because his mom works for Trent Williams, a former OU All-American and literally the best offensive tackle in all of football. So she works in the marketing department for him. So that has nothing to do with anything. So do you have any recruiting nuggets you want to drop a little bit right now?
Well, I'll say this much. The Arch Manning variable is a very, very interesting one at this point. And the reality is that there's a lot of belief. There's an increasing belief. I shouldn't say a lot of belief yet because we haven't seen any crystal balls yet. But there's an increasing belief that maybe Texas is in the driver's seat at this point to land Arch Manning. So how much, if at all, does that change things with some of those high-end skill position targets offensively that both Oklahoma and Texas are in the mix for? I know there are people speculating that, perhaps a commitment from Arch Manning could help sway a guy like Jaquays Pettaway. perhaps in favor of Texas as opposed to Oklahoma. So again, what does that look like if Arch decides to shut it down in favor of Texas? I don't know. That will be an interesting variable to watch in the coming days. But as far as Oklahoma is concerned, it continues to appear as though Makari Vickers is going to come down to OU and Alabama. That Texas official visit appears to be dead in the water. And though he visited Michigan, it has felt for some time as though Oklahoma and Alabama are in the best position to land his commitment. So that will be one to watch going forward. Trying to think who else is at the top of the priority list right now. Seen a lot of crystal balls flip from Oklahoma to Kansas State for Dylan Edwards. That is a byproduct, more so than anything, of Caleb Hicks' commitment, as well as the fact that the Champion barbecue, just from what I've been told, speaking to sources close to Dylan Edwards, didn't really make him feel like a priority to Oklahoma. So you got Caleb Hicks committed. The Sooners appear to be in a good spot for Dalen Smothers. We're still kind of checking up on that in the aftermath of his official visit to NC State this past weekend. But we will see what transpires there. I think the reality, though, right now is that with Hicks committed, Oklahoma can turn the sole focus of their recruiting at the running back position on Smothers and do their best to close on him. And they do lead for him right now. And that leads maybe, and again, still trying to discern what exactly the returns are from the North Carolina State visit this past weekend. But that lead going into this weekend was pretty sizable. So
he's got Florida State too.
Florida State looms large.
Yeah.
But if you close out with Dalen Smothers, if DeMarco Murray can put the wrap on that recruitment, you get Smothers and Hicks. It's a pretty dang good class. You look ahead to the month of July. Obviously, Peyton Kirkland's commitment is on the calendar. Caden Green's commitments is on the calendar. Have I put in any crystal balls this week in favor of Oklahoma? I'm racking my brain. I've been so focused on baseball the last 48, 72 hours or so.
I feel like you did. I feel like you did for maybe a 24, or was it a 24 player? I can't remember.
Somebody said in the YouTube chat, looks like Parker is sunburned. No, I'm not sunburned. I think that's just the light. I don't know why it appears that way, but okay. Here's the one that I was thinking of. You've seen some Oregon crystal balls start flying for Tyler Turner. That was an OU Oregon battle down the stretch. Kind of felt like with the relationships at play, Oregon had the upper hand there, especially with them getting the last visit. But I don't know if that's a recruitment that wraps up soon. I get the impression that there's some variables at play that might push Turner's final decision back a ways. So I don't know what to make of that one. I didn't have Turner in my last class projection for Oklahoma. I've never really favored OU in his recruitment, but again, I think that'll be one that is at least worth keeping an eye on. I guess we haven't done this since Hicks committed, which would have been last Wednesday. So yeah, our last live would have preceded that. We really haven't had a chance to go in detail on that. That is a big get for Oklahoma. Yeah. At face value, it's a big get because he's a 4-star back, one of the top 10 in the 2023 cycle. But when you throw in the added bonus that he's a teammate of Anthony Hill, the number 1 linebacker in this entire class, whom OU is trying to make a surge for and trying to outpace USC and A&M and Miami, Texas, Alabama as well for. It's another arrow in the Sooners' quiver in their pursuit of Anthony Hill. Does that mean they get Anthony Hill? Not necessarily. Does that mean they lead for Anthony Hill? Not at all. But it does mean that they have one more data point that they can push at Anthony Hill as they attempt to recruit him to Norman. And as we've said before with a kid like that, yeah, you know what? The Sooners are in excellent position to land 6 or 7 different linebackers. in this class. Brent Venables can have his pick of the litter among the group that Oklahoma is recruiting in essence right now. But Anthony Hill is the type of guy that you're going to make a spot for. And so he can take as long as he wants. If the Sooners fill up at the linebacker room or within the linebacker room, worst comes to worst, they're going to process somebody to make room for Anthony Hill, because that is a player that you do not pass up if he wants to come be a part of your program.
Yeah, no, for sure. Look, I think on Hicks is obviously a big get. Like you said, variety of reasons, 4-star status. He's one of the best running backs in the state of Texas, if not the best 2023 running back in the state of Texas. He has a chance to really skyrocket up the rankings after his senior year. He was a player that we've been watching since he was a sophomore, and you could see the development. He got better and better and better to the point where everybody's starting to offer him. Alabama wanted him pretty badly. So this was a big get for DeMarco Murray. And, you bring up the Anthony Hill aspect of it all. I don't want to be the naysayer and all that, but I mean, like it's hard for me to fathom him anywhere than A&M right now. And that's just my gut talking and the things that I've heard. But on the flip side, if a decision's made in August and say Texas A&M struggles, or, coaches start leaving and doing things and all that, I think at the end of the day, it's not over. So I think it's going to be one of those deals where he commits, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him, end up visiting Oklahoma a couple times after he's committed to A&M. Like, that type of stuff doesn't shock me. If it was the other way around, I would think it would be dang near shut down, because that's just how Oklahoma operates. A&M doesn't operate like that. A lot of programs don't operate the way Clemson or Alabama or Oklahoma or a couple of those programs, where if you commit to them, you don't go anywhere else. That's just how they work. So that's also kind of the holdup here. And I know people are like, well, what about Picchiotti? He's another guy that we think is going to be making a decision in July. And right now, we like where Oklahoma stands with him. Now, he visited Michigan, how that being closer to his home in Pennsylvania, how all that worked out, I don't know. But I do know that when I talk to Picchiotti, he is very open to the fact that he loves Brent Venables. He loves Ted Roof, and he has he holds Oklahoma in high regard, and maybe higher than everyone. And there's a reason why Brian Doan also has put in a crystal ball for him. I mean, he's visited Oklahoma more than he's visited any other place outside of Penn State. And I think when I say follow the visits, that's probably when you can follow the visits and figure out where it's going to end up at the end of the day. With Omasigo, I mean, he just got his 4-star, so congratulations to him to begin with. But is he visited? He's visiting Florida this weekend, correct? So I think you're on mute.
Yes, I was on mute. My apologies. This weekend is the Florida official for Omasigo, yes, and he does not have any officials set beyond that, at least in terms of a concrete date. There are a couple schools that he was tossing around the possibility of visiting officially, but as far as set in stone OVs, this is it for Omasigo.
Yeah, and because he's such a good athlete and he can play a variety of positions. He could come down and be the nickel. He could be obviously an outside linebacker, inside linebacker. He could be a safety if he doesn't, fill out his 210-pound frame that he already has. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we all think he's going to, and he's going to be 230, 240 when it's all said and done. But I don't know if he's one that Oklahoma just takes, right? Like, if he commits, do they take him? Do they take Picchiotti and just call it a day? I mean, that's with everything that they have available to him right now. Or do you take 4 linebackers and figure out the numbers later on? I mean, there's a lot of things that can go on with this 2023, because I think they're going to end up taking between 25 and 28 anyways, as far as commits. And then maybe 2 or 3 transfers at most, because I don't think they want to rely on the transfer portal anymore.
No.
It's just not BV style.
Yeah, if you've heard Brent Venables talk about the transfer portal, it's pretty clear that he's going to utilize it as minimally as possible. This year was kind of the exception because you saw a personnel exodus to an extent. It wasn't an outright exodus, but it wasn't a mass exodus, but you did see a lot of departures in the aftermath of Lincoln Riley's move to USC. So the Sooners were in a situation where in order to fill some of the roster holes that they had, that Brent Venables kind of had to swallow his pride for 1 year and just dive heavy into the transfer portal. They did that. They made some really good additions, most notably Dylan Gabriel. But those are all impact guys and guys that are going to have the opportunity to start for Oklahoma in 2022, from Gabriel all the way down to guys like CJ Colden and Jonah Laulu on the defensive side. So again, Brandon, you make the point. I think it's a good one. That's not going to be standard operating procedure for Venables going forward. So particularly with regard to linebackers, you think about who you're going to lose next year. TD Roof is a 1-year rental. He's going to be graduated. Deshaun White is in his 5th year at Oklahoma. He's going to be graduated after next season as well. Trying to think, is there anybody else that will for sure be moving on? David Agwebu is going to have another year if he wants it.
Yep.
No, excuse me. He'll have 2 more years if he wants it. And then you've got some youth with Stutzman, who's only a sophomore, Canick, McKenzie, they're freshmen. Shane Witter is entering his junior year, but he's got 3 more to play if he wants it. So I don't know if there's an immediate need for 5 linebackers, but
I don't think so.
No, I think you could definitely make room for 4. And that's probably the cap for Oklahoma. The absolute cap would be 4. And then again, if Anthony Hill wants to come, then
you make 5.
You figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would think 4 is pretty much the cap at linebacker for Oklahoma. And I think it might be hard not to take 4 at this point, just because of how many guys seem like they want to jump in the boat with Venables and Oklahoma at some point in time.
Well, and I'm reading the comments. I'm looking, and people are like, "Well, I'm just ready for the season to start because recruiting's a mess." Is it a mess? No, it's not a mess. Like, it's not even July yet. Like, you got 6 months until National Signing Day. People need to relax. Like, if you go look at majority of the programs, even some of the top, they're not loaded up with their class right now. Like, it is what it is. Kids are taking longer to make a decision because they can, number one. Number two, because of all the moving parts. I think last year, with all the coaching changes that happened, that is a lot of the reason why you see a lot of kids dragging this out this year. Everybody wants to pinpoint and say NIL, NIL, NIL. No, the coaching changes had almost everything. When we talk, Parker, you can vouch for this. When we talk to kids all the time, they're like, you never know where those coaches are going to be. That's why I'm kind of
exactly what they say. Word for word.
It's just
word for word.
So they're dragging it out.
This past cycle taught kids a lot of lessons about how quickly things can change across the landscape of college football, and how many coaches can be completely at home at their current job, and then perhaps by choice or perhaps by lack of choice, they've got a completely different job 2 weeks later. Because again, to use the example of Lincoln Riley, for instance, he chose to take the job out at USC. That was his choice. It resulted in a lot of burned bridges. And so to a certain extent, he has to deal with the ramifications of that choice on the recruiting trail. But at the same time, it comes with a great deal of benefit as well, because, you have guys that are committed to you, guys like Malachi Nelson and Ray Leak Brown, Mekhi Lemon, et cetera, that are going to be willing to go join you wherever you're at. But you think a guy like Brian Odom wants to be coaching at USC? You think it's by design that he's out there coaching at USC right now? I don't want to mean to insinuate that he doesn't like the job he's got out there, or that somehow USC is undesirable to a guy like him, but that's not where he planned on being in the year of our Lord 2022. That was just a natural byproduct of the circumstances and the way things unfolded. So when you have so many moving parts and so many things that are out of your control with regard to relationships, yeah, you know what? Sometimes it will behoove you to take as much time with your choice as a prospect as possible, because you can be blindsided, as so many kids were in late November, early December, when you had guys like Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly move and take staff with them to different destinations. Same with Mario Cristobal, same with Dan Lanning. It happens so frequently, and it happens in such great quantity every single cycle.
Yeah, it does. And look, I know people also have questions about Peyton Bowen and if that thing's still on or whatever. Yes, Oklahoma is still very heavily recruiting Peyton Bowen. I can tell you he talked with Oklahoma today, was talking to, him and some people, and, that it's still, the lines of communications are still open. Now, I don't know how to word all this, so I'm trying to be very, very delicate on how I go about this. I'll put it to you like this. There seems to be some momentum with Oklahoma still, but, and I don't want to dive into how or why or if things have happened or if a visit has taken place or anything like that, because that's not something that needs to be talked about at this juncture, because the kid literally is trying to take a step back and kind of think for himself right now. He is really, really struggling with a lot of things, and it's been kind of a up and down situation for him. So I think Oklahoma is in a good spot for him. Obviously, he's on the heels of the Notre Dame visit as well. So they're in a good spot as well. Obviously, being committed to them puts them in a good spot, right? But this is far from over. I'll put it to you like this. Like, this could be something that drags out through September before we get, hey, I'm shutting it down or I'm going to flip. Like, that's where this is at. It's a kid really, really torn in the decision. I think he committed to Notre Dame early, kind of upset with the previous Oklahoma staff with how they stopped talking to him. And Brandon Hall and Jay Valai and Brent Venables all made big, big sweeping declarations to put Oklahoma back in a very good spot with him, and dug Oklahoma out of a massive hole that almost seemed insurmountable at one point, to be honest with you, if you knew the real deep feelings with all that. So for Oklahoma to be where they are, it's really, really good for what the staff's been able to do. Now it's up to the kid. Now it's up to Jackson Arnold, being a teammate, being one of his best friends. Can he help close the deal out? Because he's also a byproduct of all this. He's helped Oklahoma quite a bit and made Peyton Bowen feel really comfortable with the Sooners. So we'll see where all this heads. I know everybody wants it to be just, a done deal. That's just not how this is going to play out. But I'm here to tell you all, for everybody that thinks that recruiting is just a mess, talk to us about August 15th, and then we'll see how big of a mess it is, because I think y'all are going to like some of the things that take place over the next month and a half once July 1st hits. That's just my gut feeling.
And again, there are a lot of guys that are winding down to decisions, but that want to make sure they have all the facts in front of them, have talked to everybody that has a hand in the process to make sure that they're making the right call. And that's why I think when you're looking ahead, you've already seen some of those decisions go in Oklahoma's favor thus far in the month of June. In the last week, the Sooners have picked up commitments from Cade Mcintyre and Caleb Hicks. So for the people pushing the narrative that it's a slow time in recruiting, the Sooners have 2 commits in the last calendar week. That isn't slow. That isn't slow. If if you got commitments at that rate, the recruiting cycle would only last 3 months. So it's already, the Sooners have already reaped the benefits of this recruiting cycle, and they've reaped some of the fruits of their labor in terms of the relationships that they've cultivated via the recruiting trail in the month of June. You throw Keon Brown into that discussion as well, another kid that has committed to Oklahoma since the beginning of June. But looking ahead, the two guys that I kind of have circled are teammates, Edric Hill and PJ Atabare up at North Kansas City. Oklahoma did just offer Edric Hill last week. So all of a sudden they have officially entered the picture for him after kind of slow playing him and hanging back on the fringes until they got the chance to see him in person at the OU camp, which he was dominant at. And I will say this, just talking to people close to Edric Hill, it's not a slam dunk that he ends up at Oklahoma because the fact that OU waited so long to offer him is significant. That does not take them out of the race by any means, and I don't want to insinuate that that is the case, but it doesn't. I guess here's the best way I can put it. There is some hesitance on that end that wouldn't be there if Oklahoma had offered, say, in January or February. Now,
Right.
for PJ, he's still trying to work out the kinks and potentially end up taking an official visit down to LSU. But even if that happens, that'll be his last OV. He's been to OU, obviously. He's been to Northwestern, and he went to Missouri as well. That was another official that he ended up taking. But the LSU visit, if it does happen, will be his last. And just talking to him in the middle portion of last week, when we spoke on the phone, he told me, look, I'm getting pretty close. I'm getting pretty certain at this point in time about where I want to be. And I just want to make sure that I'm 100% confident in the decision before I officially pull the trigger. But PJ's getting close. And for a kid that's a national top 100 prospect and one that is leaning towards Oklahoma at the moment, and the 24/7 Sports crystal ball reflects that, that is another potentially hugely significant addition that Oklahoma could make on the recruiting trail in the coming weeks. And you combine that with Caden Green's announcement date in early July and a number of other shoes that could drop. Think about Samuel Masigo. Think about Phil Picchiotti, to the linebackers that we talked about earlier.
Anthony Evans, Jaquays Petaway. Yeah.
Dalen Smothers. You can throw him in that
Dalen
conversation
Smothers,
as well. So
Cole Adams.
Here's what people need to understand. The vast majority of these kids want to be committed before their senior year begins. And I was talking, I've built such a phenomenal relationship in this recruiting cycle, in particular with Sean Davian Bradley, the 5-star edge rusher out of Platte County, who OU's new staff has not pursued. He's right now looking at a top 3 of Tennessee, South Carolina, and Texas A&M, unless something changes drastically. But for the longest time, he had said, look, I'm not making a decision until December. I'm not pulling the trigger until signing day, at least. Even he, in talking to his coaches in conversations that he'd had with people close to him, has decided, you know what? I probably want to just go ahead and get this thing over with by the time my senior season starts. And look, that's the type of kid where most every program that's recruiting him is going to leave the light on for him for as long as he wants to take. So that is not a guy that needs to accelerate his decision, but it is increasingly the mindset among a lot of these players in the class of 2023 that they need to get this thing out of the way. They need to have their decision out of the way by the time their senior season rolls around in late August, early September, just because at that point you're done. You can check out, you know where you're going. You can focus on recruiting your peers, and you don't have to worry about fielding phone calls all day while you're trying to focus on your coursework and your workouts and game planning for the next Friday. It's just a lot for a college kid to swallow throughout the fall if they have to deal with, or I'm sorry, a high school kid to swallow throughout the fall if they have to deal with all of that in addition to the recruiting process. So many of these kids will have a decision made by mid-August at the absolute latest. So I don't know when the avalanche is going to officially kick off, but when it happens, it's all going to happen pretty fast.
Yeah, and look, first, we got to get this out of the way. We have not said hello to Ricardo LeBlanc because we know he's going to.
Well, it's about time, Brandon.
I know. We waited about 45 minutes into this one. I apologize, Ricardo, but what is up to my man? I was talking to him yesterday on Father's Day, actually. So look, there's a lot of people that are questioning. I mean, you got a Cole Adams question. I said I was out seeing him, and it took like 35 minutes for somebody to even ask, what's the news on Cole Adams? Well, he was visiting Arkansas this past weekend. I will have a lot more on OU Insider about my gut feeling on this and why. But Arkansas has made a really big push. Oklahoma's still way up there. I know he talked with Oklahoma earlier today, so I want to save this for OU Insider because it's going to be there's some pretty good nuggets in this one. So
set the hook.
Well, it's 60% off through the end of the night, I think. So
love it.
You know, they can always hop on that before it ends tonight.
Colton Boston, getting a lot of questions on him.
Yeah, we're getting David Stone questions because he said somebody linked that to me as well about, you know, this YouTube thing where his mom, he said his mom doesn't want him in Oklahoma. I think he worded that a little wrong because that's not how I've always understood it. And maybe I'm the one misunderstanding it, but from my understanding is she doesn't want him to just straight up commit. And we're talking about the 5-star defensive lineman, David Stone, from IMG, originally from Del City, Oklahoma. Grew up a big Oklahoma fan. He still will tell everybody that Oklahoma is his favorite school if you actually sit down and talk to him. He is more open to the idea of playing on the East Coast or somewhere else. But at the same time, he will also tell you his best relationship is Brent Venables and Todd Bates, and it's not even close, and Miguel Chavis. He talks to those guys every week. He talks to them constantly. When you talk to people around Norman, the confidence that they have that they're going to get David Stone, still very high. When you talk to people around David Stone or David Stone in general, he will tell you Oklahoma is still his leader. So I think people need to take a deep breath with that. It is such a long ways to go before National Signing Day for 2024, and that's not till 2023 of December. So you've got a long ways to go there. Like, we're a year and a half away. And what if David Stone decides he doesn't want to go back to IMG and he stays in Oklahoma? What if he goes and plays at Edmond or Mustang or Del City or something like that and finishes his high school career at one of those places? I think that would tend to make you believe that he wants to stay in Oklahoma. His sister goes to OU. I think everybody needs to realize that. His sister goes to OU. So when you take a step back and you look at things, not from an emotional standpoint, but just from a common sense standpoint, you still have to feel really good about Oklahoma's chances. But Georgia's in there. He visited them recently when he was down there for the rival stuff. He's visited Alabama. He's visited LSU. He's visited Florida. He's visited Miami. Like, he's visited all these places. So of course his eyes are going to be a little bit open to what could possibly be at these other schools. But the second he got back from summer break, you know where he was? He went straight to Norman. And then he came back again and went to camp in Norman. So you guys follow the visits. He's visited Oklahoma like 50 times. So, I mean, you take that for what it's worth. I think the other question was, did T.A. Cunningham commit to USC? No, that did not happen. Not from my understanding. I even had a USC person reach out to me and say, did he commit? No, you would have seen one of those from Lincoln Riley if that happened. So,
or would you?
I think you would. I think you would. What's all the rest of, like, I think everybody's in their feelings over defensive line recruiting. I put this up on the board today, Parker, and you tell me. Yeah, I'm going to say these names right now. PJ Adebawore, Edric Hill, Derek LeBlanc, and was that 4 or 3?
That was 3.
Colton Vasek. If Oklahoma ends up with those 4, you think everybody's going to have a pity party about defensive line recruiting?
No, and I'll say this much. I think they will get
And
at
David
least,
Hicks is still out there too.
Yes. I think Oklahoma will get at least 2 of 4, and I'd be willing to wager they get 3 of those 4.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they're going to get those 4. I was just saying, like, if they get those 4, and those are just like the 4 names that popped off the top of my head, how you can't have a pity party over defensive line recruiting. And honestly, if you go back and look at how Oklahoma's recruited defensive line wise from 2018 to 2022, it's been pretty dang good. Like, it really has. They've got a lot of top 250 kids committed to them. They've got some of the top. What was Kelvin Gilliam was what, top 60? Is that right? Like, he was way up there, correct?
He was up there. I don't remember exactly where.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like, everybody needs to relax. Like, the talent is there. Jalen Redmond was a 5-star on 247. So, I mean, let's relax, guys. Let's settle down on the defensive line stuff. They've got some really good players. They've added, I mean, Ethan Downs is pretty good. I'm just going to throw that out there. Marcus Stripling, Jonah Lulu, Jeffrey Johnson. Like, these guys can play. They've been proven players at the college football level. So let's relax. You got Todd Bates, you got Brent Venables. I think things are going to be all right as far as defensive line recruiting goes. Let's get a couple questions in before we end this real quick.
Okay,
and
here's one.
Yeah, go for it, because I'm
question.
digging.
Is Jackson Arnold the only 5-star in this class for Oklahoma at the end of the cycle? No. I am going to say no.
No.
I think the Sooners will have 2. And I think there are multiple
possibly
paths
3
that they can take to having multiple. Does that mean they get David Hicks? Perhaps. Does that mean they get somebody like Jaquazi Petaway, who is right outside of 5-star territory right now? Perhaps. Does that mean they get PJ
LeBlanc, who's in there?
Yeah,
he's in that range right now.
Yeah, so I think there are enough options on the table, enough viable possibilities on the table that Oklahoma is going to conclude the cycle with multiple 5-stars. Now, I'm not saying to bank on 4 or 5. I think
they may not get another, but we feel like they will. Like,
yes,
at some way, somehow, it's going to work out in their favor to have one.
I feel pretty confident that the Sooners will have multiple, because again, it might be by virtue of a commitment from Hicks, or it might be LeBlanc, it might be Jaquazi Petaway. I still am inclined to believe that PJ Adebawore is going to rise significantly higher than he's already risen.
Yeah, I agree.
In recruiting rankings, and he may very well push for 5-star status by the time this cycle wraps as well. So, with so many ways that could theoretically happen, yeah, I would say there's a good chance Oklahoma gets multiple 5-stars.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, you named off 4 or 5 guys that have a chance to do that. And you want to know, there's another guy out there that has a chance to really skyrocket up the rankings that nobody's really talking about, that multiple people that we know that are involved in the rankings are very high on this guy. And he's been kind of hovering around the 100, 115 range for a while. They're wanting to see him develop a little bit more at the defensive back and wide receiver because he's so raw. But as far as athlete goes, there may not be a better athlete in all of the nation than this player, because he's got Power 5 offers in both sports. And he's from Oklahoma. His name's Jacoby Johnson. And there is a lot of people that are out there. And I'm not just talking like actual coaches that I know from around the country that think he could end up being the best DB out of this whole class when it's all said and done, because he is so raw, he's so long, he's so fast. Like, the dude is a legit 4.344 guy, and he is one of the best point guards in the country, and he's one of the best overall athletes in the country. He's choosing football,
and he's also 6'3".
Yes, he's a legit 6'3" too. and can fly. And there's not, I mean, he could end up at DB. He could end up at wide receiver. Oklahoma loves him at corner. They're going to let him play corner first because that's where he wants to play in college. He even said, money. He said at corner, it's way better. Yes. He said, it's way better. He goes, I want to learn how to play. And he said, look, I love where Oklahoma stands with that. Number one. Number two, I really believe he has a chance to be at least a top 75 player at the minimum when it's all said and done, because his film this year could be that good. And I'm telling everybody right now, and this isn't because I live in Mustang, you can ask any high school coach around or anywhere. They have the dudes they have coming up from elementary up through middle school is just insane right now. Insane. They have their 7th and 8th grade squad is some of the best I've ever seen. And there's probably 5 or 6 Division I kids on each squad. Like, it is insane. Their freshman squad has, I think that the FBU camp had 4 All-Americans. Like, that's how good they are. Like, that town is loaded for years to come. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, you've got to love that, because that means that talent's coming through the state, and the odds of them staying in state are always much better than leaving state. So you want the Jinx of the world, the Mustangs, the Bigsbys, the Broken Arrows, the Owassos, the Booker T's, the Edmonds, the Normans. You want them to be loaded, because that's good for the Sooners, right? I mean, that's just common sense. So yeah, there's a lot of good coming up here in the state. I think the 25 class in the state of Oklahoma and 26 could be just different.
That 25 class may be the best that the state has ever seen when it's all said and done. There are, 25 in Oklahoma is loaded. Somebody else asked in the YouTube Q&A if Oklahoma is only taking one tight end. Not if they can help it. I'll say that much. And what has made this whole thing interesting with regard to the tight end position over the last couple of weeks is that Oklahoma looked like the heavy favorite to get Reed Mikeska. Miami turned the tide in a hurry and ended up getting his commitment last night. So the Sooners have Cade Mcintyre, the 3-star athlete out of right up the road in Fremont, Nebraska, committed. I'll be out to see him tomorrow morning, get some notes up on him, talk to him about Oklahoma, what their vision for him really is, because, you talk to different people, you get different answers, but he's mentioned in passing that OU wants to play him at tight end. And especially with some of the bigger targets on the tight end board now off of the board for Oklahoma, Marcus Dixon and Olsen Henry are both committed to Clemson. You got Mike Heska committed to Miami, and obviously the Sooners are out of it with both Luke Hasz and Deuce Robinson. McIntyre is kind of a natural fit at that tight end position because he gives you a body. He gives you an answer, and he's more of a wide receiver than he is a tight end at this point in time. He's going to need to bulk up a little bit, but he moves very, very well, and he's more than capable of being an impact guy at that position at the collegiate level. The Sooners are in it for Malachi Coleman, and I'm not really comfortable going any further than that because I'm not sure how in it they're going to be at the end of it all. I'm not buying the crystal balls for Nebraska. I know everybody believes that at this point in time, that's where he's going to end up. And I'm not saying he won't, but I think it's actually very premature to conclude that that's definitely going to be the spot, because he has a lot of interest in USC. He's got a lot of interest in Oregon. And I think if Alabama decides to jump in with an offer to him, that's going to make things very interesting as well. Oklahoma is not top 3 for Malachi Coleman at this point in time, I would say. So that's about where things stand with him at the moment. And then I need to loop back around with Jackson McGowan, the longtime Cincinnati commit, who's been picking up Power 5 offers as of late, Oklahoma being one of them. Not really sure which direction that one is trending. Again, I do need to loop back around on that, and I might do that tomorrow. But, the tight ends board right now is one where there are a lot of questions, because You got Cade Mcintyre, and you know there's going to be somebody else. It's just not really
Mhm.
clear who that somebody else is. I would have counted on Mike Keska until a week ago. And
Right.
here we are, and kind of back to square one.
Yeah, I agree with you. The tight end recruitment, you and I talk about this quite often. It's just kind of a conundrum. I think if you were Oklahoma right now, it would hindsight 2020. Let's just put it to you like that. Hindsight 2020. Taking 3 last year and taking Andre Dollar might have been a better option than not. You know what I mean? Like letting that slip away and get out of state now, which I hear he's going to start as a freshman up there at Washington State. So that's great. But
Yeah, he's gonna
that
start.
one was always, yeah, that was always kind of a head scratcher. Like why they didn't. It stemmed from Beamer, and then at that point it was just so far gone. Oklahoma couldn't have done anything. But I don't know. Maybe he grad transfers to Oklahoma down the line. I mean, I don't know. I always thought that was kind of a weird deal how that whole recruitment played out. One final question, because I think this is a really good one. Travis Penner, what do y'all think about the weekend getaway that DG took the offensive guys this weekend? Basically wanted us to talk about his leadership. I think it's been well documented. Dylan Gabriel's leadership is off the charts, right? Like he is far and away the players love him. They want to be around him. He put that whole thing together, like from getting the home to the place that they went on the lake down there at Quartz Mountain. I think that in Medicine Park, I think that was huge. I think the bonding aspect of it was huge. I think you'll probably see something from the defensive side a little bit later on. I think that's really neat. I think the coaches are actually pushing that, like go as a big group, do what you can do, pitch in the money, doesn't cost that much, and go have fun together, build these bonds, because something like that, so small, can be the difference. And I know it sounds really weird to say, between a win and a loss, like during the season, because if you trust your quarterback and you're around him and you believe in what he stands for, and you as a collective group believe in that, the same thing, that can be the difference between being, I guess, I don't want to say a loss and a win. I know I said that earlier, but kind of between fighting together and being at odds with one another in times of tribulation, if that makes sense. So I love this part of it. I think that was huge. And I think it would be kind of neat if they made it the starting quarterback each and every year. They made it kind of a ritual that they all take everybody to some place during the summer for a weekend and really bond each and every summer. I think that type of stuff's kind of lost these days. I honestly do. And I think that's huge that Dylan Gabriel decided to step up and do that.
All right. Well,
all right. You have nothing to say on that.
We've about covered the gambit. Yeah, we're coming up on 9:45. So let's call this one a wrap. And we are gonna do our best to record an OU Insider Under the Visor podcast for y'all this week, because with as much as we have had on our plates, that has kind of gone by the wayside for a while. That was not by design, and we are definitely eager to get back in the rhythm of doing that on a weekly basis. So we're going to try to sit back down this week and knock out another OU Insider Under the Visor podcast for y'all. So expect that at some point in time to hit your streaming platforms.
Awesome. Yep, I agree. We need to get back at that and start making it a routine again now that we're not going crazy with the travel like we were. That was just nuts for a while. Before we go, obviously it's ending here very soon. 60% off right now. You can get for $43. You can get 1 year of OU Insider, or if you want to go, it's not going to be $1 for the first month. It's $9.95. But if you pay the $9.95, you automatically get Paramount Plus with it. So whatever your login is on OU Insider, you go to Paramount Plus, or you go into the settings, you go to the account, you go to the Paramount Plus upgrade, you put your stuff in, and boom, you can go get the app, and bam, you're logged in. You get Paramount Plus, all the thousands of shows. Obviously, Top Gun 2 Maverick's going to be on there pretty soon. You got The Offer, which is about the Godfather, the making of The Offer. If you haven't watched that, I very much recommend that you guys go to Paramount Plus and do that. So yeah, $9.95 a month right now. If you sign up month to month with OU Insider, you get Paramount Plus to go with it. Like, that's great. Or you can do $43 and get a whole year. That means you get all of 247 Sports, you get all of not just OU Insider, but all 250 sites. And you get to be the best college football insider there is, walking your job, whatever occupation you do, inside the office. You can be like, oh yeah, well, I know this, this, and this. And that's what we're here for. We're here to make you guys the people in the know when it comes to college football and recruiting. So again, $9.95 a month gets you OU Insider plus Paramount Plus, or you can go sign up for 1 year, $43. And then when you sign up, when it rolls over to this time next year and they charge your card full, you get Paramount Plus to go with it. That's still $250 worth of value. I mean, you can't beat that. So even if it's $100 on your card or 75 or whatever it is. So anyways, for Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brandon Drumm. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. You guys have a blessed night. Thank you all so much for watching.
All right. All right.
Are we out?